The movie begins in Moscow during World War II in November 1941, and you learn that the city is under bombardment by the German army. We then see a pilot officer, Nikolai, walking through an air raid shelter. Suddenly, he spots two thieves robbing a woman. He immediately rushes to rescue her, but sadly, they've already stolen her food coupons. He tries to help, but she dismisses him and walks away. The scene then shifts to the Western Front in December 1941. We see 3 Russian army planes led by Nikolai aiming to strike a German army convoy. Initially, they succeed, but the German forces begin to fight back. They outnumber the Russians and manage to shoot down 2 planes, leaving only Nikolai's. Nikolai and his assistant Shota manage to land their planes safely, somewhat far from the German forces. Their plane, however, is practically ruined and they have run out of fuel and ammunition. Nikolai decides to set it on fire so when the Germans find it, they might think they're dead and stop searching for them. This would give them time to try to escape and save their lives. Unfortunately, before they get this done, they encounter a few German soldiers. The plane's cannon has very little ammunition left, so Shota decides not to surrender and keeps firing at them. The fight begins. Shota uses the machine gun, but Nikolai uses his personal gun. They manage to hold the Germans off a bit, but when the cannon runs out of ammunition, Nikolai begins to execute his plan. They start setting the plane on fire and try to escape from the Germans. However, the Germans do not stop shooting. Their cannons and machine guns continue to pound relentlessly. Nikolai gets wounded, but Shota refuses to leave him behind and carries him on his back. He keeps walking with him to keep him away from the battleground. He keeps walking with him until they reach the sea. The Germans are still behind them, and Nikolai is now unconscious. Shota can't carry Nikolai any further, so he decides to put him on a snowboard and let it drift into the sea so that the board can carry Nikolai safely to the other shore. Shota pulls out his gun and goes back to continue fighting the Germans. Nikolai wakes up only to find himself on a snowboard surrounded by water. He doesn't understand how he got there and keeps calling out for Shota. He doesn't have time to think because 2 German soldiers arrive on the scene. They start shooting at him, but he quickly gets off the board and swims to shore. And he's running, trying to hide in the forest. He can keep away from them for a while until the soldiers stop beating around for him when they can't find him. They decide they'll go back, inform their commander of what happened, and see what he thinks they should do next. Nikolai, though, keeps on the run until he can find a place far away from them to hide. Unfortunately, a bullet hits his leg. We mentioned this before. It leaves him exceedingly tired, struggling to move around. So, Nikolai sits down in the forest, waiting until he's able to walk again. All he has left is his map and his gun, which only has a few small bullets left. Very much so, he makes a fire using the wood of the trees to get warm and not die of cold, and starts checking the map to see a way to get back to the driving place in Moscow. After that, Nikolai starts to remember the woman he saved from thieves at the beginning of the movie, and he remembers the next day after he saved her when he met her in the same place and got to know her, and we know that this woman is called Olga, and she is working in trenches so that people hide from being thrown. When Nikolai meets her, he gives her a lot of food off and also stamps so that you can get more food with it. So you are happy of what he did, and it looks like it, and it shows that they are really starting to like each other. The important thing is that we go back to Nikolai, and this will be his 3rd day in the forest in the snow, and he will have recovered his health a little, and he will start to get away from the German place, and we will see his very difficult life in the snow. Like, for example, he doesn't have food, so he has to eat anything from the forest grass. As for drinking, he uses hot stones and melts them a little of the snow so that he can drink from it and live. And in the same day at night, we discover that the Germans are not the most dangerous thing. By the way, there is a stupid because Nikolin is sleeping and lighting a fire next to him to warm him, but he hears a voice around him, so he wakes up and suddenly, without introductions, a wolf attacks him, but Nikolai can keep him away from him, and he sees a couple of other wolves around him, so he uses a gun and shoots a bullet at them, so the wolves get scared and run away. The next day in the morning, Nikolai is walking in the woods to try. He is a little away from him and from the place of the wolves and a little closer to the direction of Moscow. But the wolves will not forget their tar, and suddenly 3 wolves will appear at him, so Nikolai will run at all his speed in order to get away from them until he enters the middle of the trees and the matches are complete. And when Nikolai looks from behind the tree, he meets the German army forces with his coldness, and thus he will be a thinker. He hated the end because the wolves were in front of him and the enemy was behind him. But luckily at that time, Russian planes came and started bombing the German army, so the German army bombed them back, and because of the noise, the wolves ran away. The attack continued until one of the German soldiers went to hide in the same place as Nikolai and found him with his gun raised. but Nikolai fired faster and killed him and got rid of him immediately. Shortly after that, another Nikolai ran to the forest to get away from the place of attack, and on the other side, on the German side, Commander Field came to the medical center and the soldiers showed him the people who had died, but not this. What surprised him, because the strange thing is that he found one of the soldiers killed by a pistol bullet, so he realized that the Russian pilot, Nikolai, was still not dead and it must be him who killed him. So they decided to keep searching for him. After that, we returned to Nikolai, and he had been in the forest for 10 days, and his health had seriously deteriorated due to the lack of food he ate daily, and because the wound in his leg had not healed at all, and he was not getting any treatment. He was very tired to the extent that while he was walking, he found a dead fish and ate it raw. He's starving and reminiscing about his fiancée Olga. We know she was an actress in a renowned theater prior to the war. Naturally, the theater has closed due to the war. Right now, she's working by digging trenches. Their relationship appears to be improving and their mutual admiration is growing more and more. We return to Nikolai. He's in the jungle. His leg wound aches greatly, but unfortunate events never cease as he spots wolves again. Nikolai tries to crawl as he can't walk until he stumbles into a ditch. The wolves gather above so he can't escape. He fires some wood in the ditch, hoping to scare the wolves off. Yet, due to the ditch's small size, the smoke from the fire he started suffocates him and he blacks out. Unconscious, he dreams of Olga. He remembers a promise he made her long ago that he would return. Driven by this memory, he wakes up and grabs his gun. But suddenly, a wolf pounces from the hole. It would seem this could be the end. However, Nikolai uses a wood with a bear's tooth attached to it and is able to kill the wolf. Sadly, the wolf inflicts a bite on him before it dies. He faints yet again, but upon awakening, he finds himself in a vehicle hidden beneath straw. When he wakes up, the man driving the vehicle realizes who he is, in safety, and he will not kill him, but he must stay calm so that he can escape and return him to his country safely. And really, this is what Nikolai is doing. And on the way, 2 German soldiers stop the car, and we know that this man who owns the car is a Russian who lives in this place under the water, the hills of the German army. And when they ask him about the one in the car, he tells them that the wolf killed him, so they let him walk. And when he gets home, he meets his wife and they get Nikolai inside. And this Russian man is hiding. Many people have it in the basement of the house. And fortunately, there is a doctor among them. And really, they go down Nikolai in the basement also. And they start treating him. And at the same time, Commander Field comes running to the man's house, the Russian, and who we know that he is working as a blacksmith and he will come to him to fix something for him in the motorcycle. So he saw the commander as the man's mirror. The Russian and a girl while they are going out with a dish. But he doesn't know what's in it, but he doesn't care, and enters the house to see it while it is fixing the part that connected the motorcycle and to the luck market. At this time he wakes up Nikolai, but quickly the doctor keeps silent so that he doesn't talk, but Field feels that there is something wrong, so he says to the Russian man that he is the cause of the mouse, but also he doesn't believe it and hits up on the basement under the house. But thank God the bullet doesn't leave anyone, but unfortunately it hurts the doctor. We missed it, but also because no one made a sound, the Field will come out after he finished repairing in his need. But he takes the dish that he saw the woman getting out with, and when he finds blood in it, he understands. So he returns again to the Russian man's house and goes down the trench, but he can't find anyone because they would have gone out with Nikolai outside the house completely, and they try to keep him away as much as they can, and they are the ones who ran away. With Nikolai, 2 members of the army. The Russian man was also their smuggler, and on the other hand, when he went downfield to the basement and find their trail, they question the family and confess everything to him, so he knows that they are 3 from the army. The Russians include the injured stream and they don't have weapons, but although this family confessed to Field with everything, but he doesn't leave them and kills the whole family, and he decides Field with his men to start recycling on them in the forest at dawn, and really, Field goes out behind them to the forest with 2 of his soldiers, and really, they can find them when they follow footprints, but fortunately a very strong storm happens, and not they will be able to find them because the storm wiped the footprints, so his Field and his men are dispersed, and everyone is looking in his place. On the other hand, they leave Nikolai's soldiers in one place and try to hide themselves in another place, and when they finish the army, they turn around and return to serve, after which Field can reach Nikolai. But Nikolai wakes him up and hits him with a killing bullet, and the soldiers who are with Nikolai disagree, because one of them is thinking of turning him over to the Germans, because when he kills the German commander, they will come after him and search for him a lot, but one of them doesn't want to let him go. However, the other one walks away from them, and the German soldiers find him and tell them that Nikolai is the one who shot the commander, but he doesn't believe him, and they finish him off. On the other hand, the Russian soldier continues his journey, dragging Nikolai along with him, and finally, after a long period and a lot of suffering, they manage to reach the Russian troops' trenches. But unfortunately, as soon as he gets there, a bullet comes and kills the Russian soldier with Nikolai. But Nikolai moves to the hospital, and there we know that he has gangrene in both legs. This is in addition to the bullet in his leg and also an injury in his hand because of wolves and a double ray infection due to the long time he spent in the snow. I mean, in a more correct sense, his condition is very difficult, but the doctors who are there decide that they also try to treat because his pulse is still good. And really, after a while, Nikolai finally wakes up and he finds himself in a hospital and many wounded soldiers and officers, and unfortunately, he knows that they had to put his legs in order to be able to live, and because of that, Nikolai's psychological state is very, very bad. We see the nurse at the same day at night looking through Nikolai's records, and we know that Nikolai was raised in Saratov orphanage, and the days pass, and Nikolai is in the hospital, and he sees every day many soldiers destroyed by the war and made them helpless. But after a while, they lose the Germans, and life returns to normal again, and that is it, Nikolai. Of course, at this time, he spent a lot of time in the hospital, so he thinks to send letters to Olga, but he makes his decision every time because he sees himself as incapable, and that is it. Olga will not love him again, and on the other hand, she sees Olga, and she is every day looking in the mailboxes, but unfortunately, nothing about Nikolai reaches her, and this makes her psychologically destroyed because she thinks that he died in the war. As for Nikolai, he starts to return hope to him again when she brings him a prosthetic nurse, and she knows that he is his, and the doctor will train him to use it, and then he can walk normally. And on the same day, he comes to the opera theater to make a show for the patients in the hospital, and they have Olga with them, and Nikolai is in his room, and he refused to attend the show at all because he knows that he will find an Olga there. But when he hears Olga singing, he gets up and wears the prosthetic limbs and tries to walk with them. But unfortunately, he doesn't know because it is literally the first time he uses it, and falls and keeps crawling until he reaches the window and sees Olga. But he doesn't call her or anything, and the party ends, and Olga goes without talking to him after that. Nikolai is more hopeful than before, and he starts all the time trying to practice walking in limbs with the help of doctors and nurses so that he can achieve his dream and return to his life normally as soon as possible. And one day, he is walking in the hospital, so he meets Olga by coincidence because she is coming to distribute the free tickets to the theater. And when she sees him, she gets mad that he is alive and he did not try to talk to her, and she leaves him and walks away. But you know after that his leg was amputated, so you know why he wasn't talking to her. And she came back to him again and hugged him in a very touching scene. Just so after a while, Nikolai will be released from the hospital and go marry Olga. And by coincidence, he finds the map that he had, and he finds Misha, and this is the Russian Condi that he had. By the way, he left a message to his family to say goodbye to them, so he goes to them immediately, Nikolai, and gives them the letter that their son wrote before he died, and Abu Misha is a medical officer in the Russian army. That's why Nikolai asks him to help him become a pilot, and this is what he refuses because Nikolai is walking with artificial limbs, but with Nikolai's insistence, he really helps him, and Nikolai flies again, and in January 1943, he officially returns to the Russian army and participates in the war against the Germans again, and appears one day as the commander of a team of pilots and can defeat a group of German forces, and his skill and experience is very, very high in combat, and he can return with his whole team without anyone. And when he arrives after the battle with the German army, is greeted by everyone at the Russian military base for his steadfastness, determination, and respect for him. Nikolai can live as he dreams and nothing can stop him, so that he becomes an important lesson for anyone who has lost hope for anything in his life, and the movie will be finished.